Hello everybody, Jason here. So today in this video I just want to talk a little bit about escaping the matrix system, what some would call it. Because there's a lot of people waking up right now across the world. Great Awakening is, I believe, taking place. People are just waking up to all sorts of different levels of how the system is unsustainable, and basically people are getting increasingly desperate and motivated to find ways, practical ways to, how do I get out of this system? And I have only a little bit of experience, but I've had quite an interesting, journey so far, and I'm actually surprised. I'm 17 months here. I'm currently camping. I've been doing the camping lifestyle. That was the step I took that I found that worked for me as a first step. And 17 months I've been out of the off the grid, I guess, out of the society for the most part, living free for the most part anyway. And so I'm in beautiful southern Arizona currently, and I never thought that 17 months later, without getting a normal job or anything of the like, going back to having to pay rent and whatnot, that I would still be doing this. And it's been an interesting journey, so I just want to take this opportunity to share a little bit of how I was able to do it and some of my ideas on other practical ways. Obviously, camping, van life is not the only ways to get off the grid, get out of the system, but it is one way, and a lot of people are doing it. And I got like a yurt canvas wall, not a wall tent, yurt style canvas tent. I got a wood stove, I got a solar panel. There you can see a makeshift, I spray painted a 5-gallon water bucket there, kind of solar heated water for shower, and solar panel gives me really all the power I need. I got a little, I like bike riding, take Dakota, my puppy, on bike rides. There's a little composting toilet. You can put a bag on it, but it's just a 5-gallon bucket with a little toilet seat on it, and I got a little shower and a beautiful area. Really had no idea that the areas in the midst of the deserts can be so forested, so beautiful. I'm up a canyon here in the Santa Rita Mountains, far southern Arizona, near the border of Mexico, probably only about 30 miles as the crow flies. And it's just, I never knew could be so beautiful. There's a beautiful little creek there, and up high mountains there's still a little bit of snow up there feeding the creek, so it'll probably dry out here in a little bit. But there's other water sources nearby that I'm familiar with from a lot of camping in this area, a lot of spots to go, a lot of desert, but also, little pockets of forest. Got oak trees, lots of junipers, plenty of firewood, pine trees, even still some cactus up here. So it's a nice combination of, terrain. So 17 months, how did I do it? Well, I didn't have any plan. I did have a plan. My plan was to buy property, save up money, buy property, and, build a little off-grid homestead. And then by the time I had enough money saved up, I lived in Montana, I ran a little landscape business, and by the time I had the money saved up, the cheap properties in the area that I had been keeping my eye on had doubled in price, so I actually wasn't able to afford it, even though I had, in a few years, maybe about 2-3 years, prices had doubled. And by the time I had the amount of money that would have bought same properties just 5 years ago, it was far out of reach. And I had long ago made a pact with myself to never go into debt, and I am still to this day very happy. I think going into debt is one of the key ways in which people are... Debt slavery, I think, is one of the key chains that holds people to this matrix system. And if you want to escape it, it's it's good to know, what is this system? What are we trying to escape? So there's really a lot of different facets, and it's really just the modern Western society in general really makes up the whole system. But it's just the work, buy, consume, die mentality, where everyone is spending the vast majority of their lives, 40, 60, even 80 hours a week, just to get by, just to make payments on rent or mortgages, to pay off their debts, student loans, all this stuff. And in the hopes that by the time they get really, really, really old, they've maybe got their debts paid off and have a little bit of retirement, and they're beyond their peak years, physically speaking. And if they're lucky, maybe they get 20 years where, they don't have to work and they get to enjoy some life. But I mean, got a lot of, with the lifestyles going on in America in particular, you get a lot of chronic disease. So even a lot of these people, even if they do get the quote-unquote American dream, which really there is no American dream, that's what people are waking up to. But if they do get what we're told is the American dream, they get a few years where, they get to relax, enjoy their reward for a lifetime of working for the system. And, maybe they get just enough Social Security to survive. Maybe they've got just enough retirement. They can actually have some funds to travel or do whatever they enjoy, if they're not, bedridden from chronic disease that is really a big epidemic in this country. So people are waking up and realizing, maybe I don't want to spend my whole life working for a possible future that I may not even get. I mean, Social Security there's no guarantees there's even going to be Social Security for my generation, the younger generations. And so people are they want out. They want to get out of this system. They want alternatives. People are realizing that the, pollution and all of the corporate practices of agriculture, spraying pesticides on the foods, poisoning the earth's water, groundwater, and that gets in everything. And, people getting cancer from Monsanto's Bayer now products. All this stuff, it's not sustainable and it's not healthy. And there's no reason. And yet this is how it goes. It's a profit-driven system, a greed-based system, a control, a power grid. It's all based on power over the people. So they want to keep the people disempowered, keep the people working their whole lives, paying off debt, so they don't have the opportunity to become free. And so obviously one of the biggest key things that people can do is, if you're not yet in debt, you can not go into debt. And if you are in debt, you can get out of debt. And if you actually can't get out of debt, there are other ways. Like if you don't care about credit scores and you have no intention of ever getting loans in the future, in many cases you can declare bankruptcy. So there are a lot of ways. And for me, having not gone into debt was one of the big reasons I was able to take this step. So as my life journey went along, and I began to get a clearer picture of, how I actually wanted to get out of the system. I think off-grid is great. I think alternative communities, self-sustainable, small community is the way to go. It's really where all the power lies, is at the local level for people. So if we want an alternative for this beast system, this matrix, we have to be able to make a community at the local level. And there's a lot of ways to do this, but I think for me anyway, the biggest thing is not a specific way of going about it, whether it's buying cheap property or turning property you already have into gardens instead of lawn, or building community on your property, or selling your property to get out of debt. Maybe you're paying mortgages and you can sell the property and use the little bit of money you get from that to buy a van or a camper and do like what I did, the camping lifestyle. And there are a lot of people doing that too. So there's a lot of different practical ways, and I'll get into a few of my ideas for how to do this. But what I really long-term want to do is be able to create, whatever the case may be, a community, just a small, self-sufficient as can be, community with a sustainable garden where you can mostly, for the most part at least, survive off of, your own production. And food is another big thing. The humans are the only species on the planet who pay to eat, and for shelter, for that matter. But I think it's pretty insane that we have gotten to the point where we are so advanced technologically. We have far more than enough food to feed the planet, and yet not only do we have to pay just to eat, which is, in my opinion, insane, but we also have about 10% of the population starving. I think 9 million people a day are going hungry, do not have enough food. And yet, at the very same time, we have, like in the Western countries at least, I know for sure in America, we waste about, I think it estimated 1/3 of our food production, produce specifically, is wasted, thrown away in landfills. And even worse, I mean, you have a lot of these stores throwing away good food simply because it's not quite perfect looking. A strawberry that's just not perfect, it'd be great for, making a smoothie, but got one bad strawberry or one bad avocado, so they have to throw the whole package away. And thankfully, there are food banks that do rescue a lot of food, and there are people, small farmers and homesteaders that make agreements with stores. And this is another thing people can do, to go to your local grocery store and see if they have the produce that they're going to throw away, see if you can collect it, say for your chickens, and maybe even for you. But the easiest thing is just tell them you want it for your chickens, and they oftentimes are more than happy to give you that extra produce. And if you want, you can sort through it and find if there's any good lettuce to make yourself a salad. And if not, and you do have chickens or ducks or a goat or pigs or whatever the case may be, it's not being thrown away into the landfill. It's actually being used. So it's a good way to go. And but you've got, on the other hand, a lot of these stores, they go to the lengths of even locking up their dumpsters, building gates, enclosed gates, and lock them, or they just lock the dumpsters so that even dumpster divers, even homeless people cannot get access to this thrown away food. So not only are they throwing the food away, they're making certain that people cannot take it, cannot use it. I mean, that's kind of just one tiny example of how this society has gone mad and how this matrix system is set up to basically screw the common man while the rich get richer and the governments and the power elite increase power. So, solutions. So, for me, I want to be able to do like a food rescue type thing. If I was at a community, or if I build my own community, my dream community would be based around free food for everyone involved, and hopefully to be able to even produce enough food through gardening, through maybe various dumpster diving, food rescue from local grocery stores, or whatever, donations from other local farmers who have extra produce they can't sell, whatever the case may be, all this, the different ways that the food is wasted, save this food, use it for animal food, for compost, and as much as possible to feed people, and not just, hopefully, obviously, to have everyone in the community would be able to survive for the most part off of the food and maybe a little bit of trading with local neighbors or whatever, but have, 90% self-sufficient food supply would be ideal, and just great in case of global food shortages. So it's not just a good alternative to the system, it's just good knowledge to have, and good people who are, growing their own food are in a lot better place when, economies collapse and when food supplies get short. So that's kind of my dream, and but, with the way of increasing housing prices and lowering inflation, basically. It just didn't work out, at least at that time in my life, to buy a property, and so I went this route. But it all started with mind state. The real prison is in our minds, and I am convinced, I know from personal experience and from hearing from a lot of different other people who have found various ways to free themselves, that really the only way out of this matrix is to go in within ourselves. We have inner powers that most people are unaware of. And when we join together, when we realize our own inner power, our own inner strength, when we free our minds from the prison that has been built around, as Morpheus accurately described the Matrix in the movie, which accurately describes the Matrix, the real life system we have. It's the prison that's been built for your mind, a prison for your mind. It's the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth, and that truth is that we are spiritual beings, powerful spiritual beings, and we have access if we can, use the methods, if we can get our minds off of our worries and go within ourselves through various means, meditation, prayer, contemplation, just, being alone in nature or even with animals, so many different ways, but we can get in touch with our source, the source energy, God, our creator. And a lot of ancient civilizations knew this. The Native Americans knew this. They had a good, close connection to the earth and to the creator, and they realized it was all one. They were one with the earth. They were one with God. God was one with the nature. Everything is all really interconnected. It all is made up of energy, and all this energy comes from one source, and this source is the source of all power in the universe. And I grew up in a Christian background, and I left Christianity for very many reasons I won't get into, but I think a lot of people who have similar experiences, that's, I think, part of the awakening, is people are leaving the organized religions and coming to more independent spiritual paths, more different interpretations, more open-minded ways of looking at things. But I just use the word God because that's how I was brought up, and so I can still relate to that without seeing God as being this image that the church has made it out to be. So when I speak of God, I'm not talking about an angry guy in the sky that wants to punish you if you don't do what the church says you have to do. Just getting that out of there. So when I say God, that's not it's not what I'm talking about, even though a lot of people, that's the connotation that comes with that word. It's all just words to try to describe something that's really undescribable. Indescribable is really just something we have to experience for ourselves, and to do that we have to go within ourselves, and this is how we free our mind. So a lot of people right now are stuck in, they see the problems with the world, they have good hearts, they want to change themselves, they want to change the world. You really have to be the change that you want to see in the world. I know it's cliche, but it's true. We have to be the change. But how do we do that when we feel so stuck? People are just hungry for solutions, for practical solutions. So for me, it was a big part of the way that I was able to get to the point where I was willing to take the leap of faith, because that's really what it was. Big leap of faith into the unknown. It's really the only way to ever find big, meaningful advancement in life, is to take leaps of faith into the unknown. Because if you always go with the known, you're basically living the past over and over again. The only way to create a different trajectory in your life is to be willing to face the unknown, take a leap of faith. So that's what I did, but I got there by overcoming fears. That's huge. Fear is the mind killer. It's also body killer. Fear causes, it's now being discovered. It's been known for ages by the ancients, but fear is cause of so much disease, and lowers immunity, suppresses your immune system, opens you up to disease, and it can cause disease too directly. So in every way, fear is not the state of mind that we want to be in. Fear is really the ultimate tool. It's the ultimate prison for our mind is fear-based thinking. So overcoming fear and victim mentalities is another big one. When we feel trapped in a situation and feel like there is no way out, we're in a victim mentality. We have to, if we can't see a practical way out right there in front of us right now, then we have to not worry about the future. Worrying about the future is pointless. It's not going to work. And worrying about the future is basically just one way that fear rears its ugly head. When we worry about negative things that we think may or may not happen, we're fearing them. So instead of doing that, we need to pull ourselves into the present moment and look at what can we do in the present moment. And then there are always things that we can do in the present moment. And if we can't see practical steps to take us closer to our dreams, our goals, we can still focus on them in our mind. We can make clear what we want. And then we just have to let go. We have to let go of, I guess the mental trying to plan all the steps. Like, I need to save this much money to get this thing, to get this thing, to get to that place, and then that's my plan of how to escape. Well, that might work in some cases, but in my experience and in a lot of other people's experience, that does not work, as I already explained, and as other people can attest. Things come up that we don't plan. Things we can never know, even if we worry about every possible outcome to try to plan, how to avoid that outcome. We're still never going to be able to think of every possible negative outcome or every possible roadblock in our path of our journey. So trying to worry about it all isn't going to work. What we got to do is just focus on what we can do, and we need to just focus on where we want to be, why we want to be there, how does that make us feel, and focus on creating that vibration within our body in the now. And then as we put out the right thoughts and the right feelings, and if we actually believe that there is a higher power out there that is on our side, then it will, be manifested. Some call it law of attraction. You call it the law of cause and effect, reaping and sowing. But all thoughts and feelings are energy, and energy interacts with the world around it. You can see it with water heating up, turns into steam. And that, affects the environment. When the sun shines on water, heats the water up, that's just one way that energy changes stuff. And I forget the name of the scientist, but a researcher showed that with water, just the human, just the tone of voice, the music, by singing in, I don't know, but not angry music, nice, calm, beautiful music, created beautiful patterns in the water. And he would play different music and then freeze the water, and then be able to look at the crystals when they're frozen and see. And then when angry, like really hard metal, angry music is played, there's really distorted patterns. And interesting, the human body is made up of majority of water. So if our thoughts and our feelings can literally change the makeup of the water, it can change our physical makeup. And if it can change our physical makeup, it can change the physical makeup of the people around us, even if we don't see it. So another way of looking at it is simply that what we think eventually comes out in the words we say, and the words are that energy, as I just explained. And then what we think and what we feel, obviously, is based a lot on the thoughts that we hold. And then what we say, eventually, when we say something enough and think it enough, we're going to actually do it. So if you're constantly, whatever you look at, whatever you focus on grows within your mind. And so if you're always looking at the negative outcomes you want to avoid, it's still going to grow in your mind. But if you're always looking at the positive outcome that you want to manifest, the dreams, how to get free from the system, that's going to grow in your mind. And as that grows in your mind, it's going to eventually, you're going to eventually see it in the world around you. And if you can have faith in something and just let go, then I think you will find, as I and many others have found, that the universe will bring the opportunities to you, and it won't happen in the ways that you would have planned. In most cases, it'll be in crazy ways you would have never imagined. But if you just stay focused on what you can do in the present moment, just let go, let God take care of the how, and you just focus on the what. So a lot of good things you can do to get in touch with your inner power, get in touch with connection with Source, with God, is meditation, prayer. One good quote on prayer I've heard that I think is really accurate is that prayer is simply unmixed, pure unmixed attention. So it's really what we focus on, eventually we're going to create in one way or another. It might not be the way we thought we'd create it. We might have thought we want to buy this property to make this off-grid community, and we end up finding someone else that has a property, and they want us to help do the same thing we wanted, but instead of having to buy a property, we're using someone else's property. Or maybe I've heard a real-life story of someone who was willing to rent a property for something like, what was it, $5 or $100, but for an entire year, renting it for a very cheap amount. And basically just free use of property because that guy wanted to use a property to help others in some way. And there are people out there that want to help. So, we have to let go. We have to get out of the victim mentality. We have to overcome our fears, be willing to jump into the unknown. It's very good to know exactly where we're heading, the kind of future we want to create, the kind of change we want to make, so that we can begin taking the steps in the now. So we gotta let go. That's what I did, and when I let go and hit rock bottom, basically of desperation, of really realizing that the situation I was in isn't what I wanted. I really wanted to get free of the system. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I have to. And when I got to the point where I was willing to do whatever it took, when I was ready to overcome my fears of if I leave my business, my home, it was a cheap rental situation, all this security and things I liked, but overall it wasn't making me happy. And when I was willing to leave that behind and risk whatever the future might hold, even though one of the worries in the back of my mind was, eventually, no matter how much money I've saved, I'm eventually going to run out of money and be homeless, because how am I ever going to rebuild this business? It took me years to get all this equipment and stuff, and I don't know, what other kind of business. I'm not going to work like a 9-to-5 job, at least I don't want to. So what happens when I run out of money, whatever I do, and, what happens? I don't have a YouTube channel making a lot of money like some people out there do. So that was a fear. And when I was willing to overcome that fear and just put it all in God's hands, let the universe work on behalf of me, instead of seeing the world as the enemy, as I had often in the past seen it as basically conspiring against me, instead see it as just giving me opportunities. And by giving me the opportunity in that point to see that the situation I was in was not good long term, I had learned all the lessons from that stage of my life, and I was ready to move on. So when that happened, one day the thought just popped into my mind that I could easily sell all my business equipment and have enough money to buy probably some kind of nicer tent that would actually be reasonable to live in for somewhat long term. And as soon as that idea popped into my mind and I actually took a hold and said, okay, I'll do that. I had no plan, no specifics of what I was going to buy, how it was going to work, but I felt at peace at that moment. I just knew this is what I'm supposed to do. This is my way out in the right now. It might not be the long-term thing. I have no idea how, camping is going to lead me to being able to build a community, but it's my way out of the moment, in the moment, and I'm going to take it. And then as soon as that happened, like I said, peace, a deep sense of inner peace, and slowly things just kind of fell into place. Looked online at different things, and the right, what I consider to be the right products for my particular situation. I stumbled across them, and a plan began to form. And next thing you know, I started purchasing. I had given myself, basically this was in like the early spring, I gave myself till the fall, so I had the whole summer season to do this, and I stayed focused on my long-term goal of wanting to help people and wanting to have, a nice close to nature property where I could eventually settle down and garden, because I knew that doing this, you're not going to have an opportunity to garden, really, and I really love gardening and want to have sustainable food supply. But that was the beautiful thing, is when I just let go, overcame my fears, was willing to jump into the unknown, and the thoughts just came to me, and when I was like, okay, I'm willing to do this, it all fell into place. Got a cot for a bed, wood stove, yurt, and everything I showed you, and trusty old Subaru. It's had a few issues on the road, but I've been able so far to fix for relatively cheap the few problems, and for the most part it's been holding up. I know it won't go on forever, but loaded everything in the trusty old Subaru and started out camping nearby in Montana so I could finish getting rid of all my excess stuff, and then headed down to Utah, and the rest is really just history, as they would say. And somehow, I've run out of money multiple times, but somehow there's always been money there. Arrives just in time. It's funny how that works. Almost always, new money's funds don't come in until your old money really runs out, and it's great how that works. And it's just been a great learning experience for me. It's been definitely a lot more freedom, not without its own problems, of course, but a lot more freedom, a lot more time, a lot for meditating and really thinking about ways, long-term solutions. And being close to nature, I think, is really key. I think a lot of people have just totally lost that connection with nature, and in that they've also lost their connection to their source, and that's where the chasing material things for happiness comes, and it just never really satisfies the deep longing for love, because that can only be found by connecting with God, which is love, who is love, and with each other and with nature. And I think, at least for me and a lot of people out there, they want a simple lifestyle, debt-free, simplicity, back to the basics. And so that's kind of, that's how it worked for me. It's how it's worked for a lot of other people. Meditation is very useful. A lot of people get ideas in meditations. And in the meantime, there's a lot of things you can do between the future that you are working towards and where you're at now, where you feel trapped in the system. You can't just sit back and let God take care of it and then do nothing. There's always things you can do in the present moment. So you can gain knowledge, educate yourself, choose how you spend your time, read more books, watch less movies. If you're going to watch movies, watch documentaries. Just try to gain as much knowledge around the subjects that you want, whether it's spirituality, whether it's off-grid techniques, gardening techniques, all this stuff. And then the more you gain this knowledge, you're also reinforcing within your own mind that this is definitely the direction you're heading. And the more certain you are that you're heading in that direction, the more you will actually begin to head in that direction. And then focusing on the present moment, what you can do in the now. How can I change myself? So I might not be able to get out of debt immediately, but I can change my mentality to being debt-free and make that my new reality of I'm debt-free. Feel as if you are debt-free even before you are, and then eventually it will come to pass. And when we focus on the present, another beautiful thing is we tend to notice opportunities in front of us that most people, I think, are otherwise missing, whether it's synchronicities. A lot of people notice synchronicities, whether it's people just in the grocery line, shopping line, that might be, the connection to an opportunity and you missed it. Could have said hi and it would have started a conversation, but you were too busy staring at the screen, checking your Facebook friends, or whatever the case might be. A lot of people in this society they are eyes glued to the screen 24/7, and they're not living really in the real present moment of the now. They're living in some alternate matrix reality on the screen, and it's detrimental to social relationships. It's really taking its toll, this having pretty much a sense of relationship all being separate on the screen. That's a whole subject for another video. But just being in the present and focusing on what can I do right now? I want world peace. What can I do right now? Well, another thing I did was to become a vegetarian. That's a really simple step that almost everyone can take towards peace, to stop supporting this wretched, horrific slaughterhouse industry and just the really awful conditions I think most people are aware of, or most people maybe are not aware of them because they just refuse to think about it, and it's just how they're brought up. You just eat meat, that's just how it is. And they really don't think about it, that it's a lot of pain and suffering, that anyone that eats meat is really, unless you're growing your own animals, you know exactly how they're being treated. It's not just that they're being killed, it's also that their entire lives they're being mistreated in awful ways. And that's really all I'm going to say about that. But that's one solid way. Stopping paying taxes to a system that spends, more than half of its funds on war, on the war machine, on the military-industrial complex, on weapons of war instead of on technological advancements like free energy or sustainable agriculture. They could literally save the world with the amount of money they spend on war. With just a fraction of the money, they could feed the world. But no, instead, they starve it through military blockades and sanctions, and by not using the money on helping people, but rather on dropping bombs on them. So, not paying taxes, I did it. That was one of the first steps I took. Others have done it. Many others have done it. Of course, you're going to have to be able to take that leap of faith of, I need to leave my job. Probably, if you're having taxes withdrawn. Some people manage to find ways to convince their bosses to stop withdrawing taxes. Some people find cash work under the table. Some people like me was able to start a small business, and that's the way they're able to do it. And I've met all these types of people in real life. I know for real that it's a very real option, and in 99% of cases, these people do not go to jail. So it's a very real possibility. Another way is to learn to live on a simple enough lifestyle, a cheap enough life, live on a little enough money, small enough amount of funds that you can work for less than whatever the threshold is for having to file and pay taxes. And I think right now that's $10,000. Might be a little less. Check into it. $10,000 or $12,000. So if you can be willing to, learn how to live on less, then you can legally, even according to their own, I would call unlawful code, even according to that, you aren't going to get hassled because you're not making enough where you have to file. And so that's another way to not pay taxes. And so there's a lot of steps that people can take, and they're just really too busy probably living their lives the way they've been taught and the way they're so used to. They're just too busy repeating the past over and over that they don't realize that these are their types of things they can do. The littlest thing as smiling at people and saying hi to the checkout person, even things like this, you never know how much it's going to help change the world. So if you like writing and yet you've never, made any writing public, you do poetry, make a blog, write your thoughts on whatever, whether it's sharing the knowledge you find about political things, about gardening techniques, about off-grid. If you have a journey like this where you're finding ways to free yourself from the system, share it with others on a blog or on videos. There's a lot of alternative platforms competing with the big tech monopolies now. They're like BitChute and Odyssey and Hive and other blockchain technology blogs, and connected with Hive there's 3Speak, and that's another video platform. And some of these have opportunities, like Odyssey and Hive are two examples of blockchain technologies where you actually can earn cryptocurrencies for content that you create. Maybe you're an artist and you can draw, artwork, graphics, different stuff like this, whatever's up your alley, and share it, and you might make some cryptocurrency. There's so many different ways. You just have to be creative. We are creative beings, and we've been taught through this matrix system basically to suppress our creativity, to just fall in line and just be little worker slaves. And we're all creative. We have creative powers, and we all have our own gifts. And so get in touch with your gifts. Find out what you're good at, and if you know like you're good at these things, find a way to put them to use in the meantime. Maybe you can't immediately make money off artwork, but you can at least start sharing your artwork with others, and in time that will lead possibly to a point where your art is somehow sustaining you. So, yeah. And then another little part of my journey that's very worth noting on the way I've not only been camping, I actually spent maybe 2.5 months doing some work trades and Washington, stayed with a friend in California, and then I found, here, let me show you this shirt, Peace, Free Food, and Love, and that's a picture of the Jesus, or Yeshua, and the heart chakra with the little fish taco or vegetarian taco, whatever you would think it is, and then the light shining out from the heart chakra, which to me was just really, that's all this time, that's what I'd been looking towards, wanting to somehow find a way to bring about peace, free food, and love in a meaningful way. And so I stumbled across this commune through this network called Woof, and it's just a network of connects organic farmers with people who want to volunteer and do work trades. So you get to stay at this farm or homestead or community or whatever it is, but it's based around organic farming. You spend about half your time and half a day, 4 or 5 hours or so. It varies based upon the different ones, but that's typically in exchange for room and board. And then, so you're working for your room and board, you still get, half a day free time. And at the same time, you gain skills in sustainable organic gardening, or learn other skills, because there's a lot of other things that people need help with, building projects, building greenhouses, raised garden beds. So great opportunities with networks like that. Woof, it's called. Anyway, I found this, it was, I guess, like a hippie-style commune in California, and stayed there for a month before I came down here to Arizona. Pretty much for the month of January, I stayed there, and it was a great learning experience, and it just showed me that there are people out there that have taken steps and found ways. It's not totally sustainable, but a big thing they were big on was the owner had found a way to do dumpster diving in the local city nearby and collect food from a local market, the leftover throwaways, and between that, he was able basically to, he had some chicken, so basically got almost all chicken food, free chicken food, and the stuff that even was too moldy or whatnot for the chickens, make it into compost for the gardens, and then free food for the entire community, and just people coming and going. really, if you're a good fit, you could stay as long as you wanted. I stayed for a month. I could have stayed longer. I'm welcome back. Made some great friends and saw really that there are a lot of people out there that want to do this. They want sustainable lifestyles. They are sick of the system. They don't want to work their lives away for greedy corporations. They'd rather spend their time and their energy and their skills helping build sustainable community, like-minded people that actually want to bring about peace, want to bring about a loving society, or in the meantime at least want to build communities that can embody these ideals. And so it was great. And the way that worked is I had just made a post that I really felt like I should make. I had been putting it off, but one day I finally sat down and did it. Over the summer in Montana, I was up there again in the summer, camping up there, and made this post. And like the next day, a follower of mine or someone who had read the post, it was just a post on, some of the lessons I had learned from the off-grid lifestyle, camping lifestyle, and this nice person just left a comment saying, there's this WOOF thing, and it might be up your alley. A lot of people have do it as a lifestyle, and you could, find free housing, maybe have free access to internet that you might not always have when you're camping, because that was one of the things I noted in my blog post, is that one of the downsides is you don't always have internet access, which is also a benefit, and you don't, you're completely in tune with nature when you don't have the option to look at the internet. You just can't, and there's no news, and it's great. But it's also great to have the access to the internet sometimes. So they, took note of that, and they were like, well, this might actually be up your alley. Check it out. You might be able to, do some farming, have some free housing, not have to worry about having money to buy food, and at the same time still have half days free to write blog posts and work on crypto earnings, and then not have to spend that on food and actually be able to save some money. So I just thought that was really amazing. And eventually, I think it's $50 a year for a whole year membership. And then in America, you have over 1,300 different farms hosts. Less in the winter, obviously, but one of the ones that caught my eye was this one, and the one in Washington. And the one in Washington didn't work out too great, but it was still, I learned a lot in my short time there, and left and worked my way down to California into this. I had no idea what I was getting into. I had no idea it was like a community, when I went down there. But sure enough, I got there, and sure enough, there's like 12 other people at the time, and it was really amazing. So I got to see firsthand, did actual dumpster diving personally for the first time. That was a very awesome experience, and I got to see how it's just possible. Outside of food banks, there are people that are doing food rescues and dumpster diving and farmer market leftovers, and he had planted some fruit trees and still trying to grow, but had just recently built a greenhouse. And right when I was leaving, they were getting seedlings started. A local friend, had brought some plants over, herbs and different plants, and so didn't do much in the farming realm, but used my handyman skills, did some repairs on one of the houses there, and just a good experience just to see that there are people out there that are using their properties, using their time to work towards these goals. And I think it's spreading. People are realizing this is a valid alternate to the system, and this is, in my opinion, right now, with the way the technocracy is going, with the global control grid, really its grip is really getting to the point where people are seeing that within the next 10 years, if we don't, as a collective humanity, if we don't take big steps towards independence, towards independent communities and self-sustainability, there will not be any freedom left. There will, potentially the planet will be destroyed imminently if we do not stop the rampant pollution, corporate pollutions, dumping all the waste into the rivers and the oceans, destroying the water supplies, all this stuff. It's got to stop. We need sustainability. The methods are out there. there are free energy technologies that are being suppressed. There's so many ways that on a big scale it could be fixed, but we can't just snap our fingers and out the politicians and all the people behind them that have humanity not at their, interest, but rather money and power. But what we can do is we can create alternatives at the local level, and so it works. And I hope that the knowledge that I've gained and been able to share here is helpful for others. And there's a couple other stories I'll share quick before I wrap this video up. So one story that at least was really inspirational for me that I want to share with you guys, that's, I think, on the same topic, very inspirational to me. I think the name John St. Julian. He has a YouTube channel. He's done a lot of videos on spirituality and also on his journey. And so a similar story of where he just let go and took a step, basically leap of faith into the unknown, and created, far more than he could have ever imagined. And it all started for him when he was doing a fast and he was watching a TV show, and he saw was a TV program about some African kids, maybe about issues with polio, but he was just seeing all this suffering of young children, and they were talking about how with just a little amount of, funds and help, that so much of this suffering could be eradicated. And he said he just got so angry because it's like, this is wrong. Why doesn't someone do something? And then immediately he says he heard a voice in his head that was just said, "You are someone." And he just had this recognition and just snapped. He's like, whoa, I am someone. Maybe I can do something about it. And he went hunting on the internet and found some African charity deal, nonprofit, and sold all his stuff. I think he's from the UK, sold all his stuff, took the earnings, took what little money he made from that, might have been a sizable chunk, took it, bought a plane ticket, got a passport and everything, and flew to Tanzania to join this, to be a volunteer for this nonprofit. And I guess it turned out that it was kind of a flailing deal and it really never gotten off the ground, and it wasn't anything like it had been advertised for. And so before the next thing he knew, a month or two later, the people who had set it up actually bailed, and they left it to him, a fully set up NGO, non-government organization, all the paperwork done and the property paid off, purchased. And they were like, it was dysfunctional. It was non-functioning, and they just couldn't get it to work, and they didn't have enough volunteers or whatever the case may be. So they left it to him. And so he just, next thing he knows, he's got a nonprofit with a property in Tanzania, in the place where he had felt called to do outreach to help kids, all in his hands, and no plan to start any sort of anything. And so the next thing he knew, he said a lot of synchronicities and a lot of people with the right knowledge just appeared and helped him out. And the next thing he knew, he was creating an orphanage to take street kids off the street and help a place for them, have safe place to stay and get them educated, get some education, rehabilitate them, basically. Just a place to love them when all they've ever known is, lifestyles of going hungry and violence and desperation and lots of abuse that goes on in such situations. So just having a loving community for them to stay in, orphanage. And after that, he ended up doing a dog rescue. So now he has also a dog shelter, dog rescue. He's rescued dozens of dogs, stray dogs. It's a huge problem. I actually grew up in Africa, Tanzania and Kenya, and there are a lot of stray dogs, and there are a lot of orphans that could use help. So that's the way it worked for him, and it all pretty similar to my story. When he just let go and took the step he could take, things just started to fall into place, and the next thing he knew, he was being used to do much greater things than he would have ever dreamed of. And so now I think he, even on top of the orphanage and the dog rescue, he also has recently set up I think 2 different special needs homes for children, one for children and one for children and mothers with mental illnesses, safe places where they can go to be with their children, but be watched over, make sure that they don't go crazy in the meantime of their issues being addressed, I think. Anyway, so that's just very inspiring example to me. It just really, what it takes is the willingness to take a step forward and to see the opportunities that are presenting themselves right in front of our very eyes. And apart from community and apart from going overseas to help places that are far more impoverished, Africa is not the only place where there's these issues. Yemen's another great example of a place where there's just so much suffering, little, especially to do with starving and sick children. And unfortunately, our government has a huge part to play in that. I will not get into it, but it's just all part of the system of a militaristic, materialistic empire. The Matrix is just, it's not set up to help people. No matter what they say, the people at the top, they don't care about you. They don't care about them. They don't care about really anyone. They care only about sustaining their unsustainable system and increasing powers. So the only way to fight back, to make lasting change, is with nonviolent resistance. Violent uprising is not going to solve anything in the long term. And just to love, to extend love, and to empower ourselves, unite together. And together, humanity is so powerful, so much more powerful than we can even imagine. And creative too, when we start getting our minds working together towards the same goals, towards good goals that would benefit all of us. It's amazing what kind of ideas we can come up with. And so that's why the media works so hard on keeping us divided, because that's, if we were not divided, they could not exist. They would collapse almost instantly, because people are to the point where we want peace, we want sustainability, we want love, we don't want endless war, we don't want all this nonsense, we don't want to suppress free energy, we want better, we want to thrive. Humanity is ready to thrive, and we have everything we need, we have all the tools. It's just very small minority of people that have created a system that has really just enslaved our minds. And as soon as we free our minds, unite, and take action, we will be able to create alternatives, and those will spread. People are hungry for change. So other things we can do at the local level, if you're going to focus on politics at all, the local level is really the only place where having a political, running for office or supporting a political candidate, the only place that politics will make any difference is at the local level. So instead of focusing on the presidential race or even the U.S. congressional races where your vote does not count. It does not matter whether there's fraud or not. It simply doesn't count. It's been shown that in the U.S. politics, the policies that are created in the U.S. Congress, the laws that are passed, are never influenced by the people. It does not matter. It never matters. Even the things that say 100% of Americans support have the exact same chance of passing as the things that only 0% of Americans want. However, when it comes to the rich, the corporations, who are actually influencing the politicians, then the funny thing about it is, the more of them that want something suddenly, the more likely it is to actually get passed. So, our democracy is worthless. Worthless for us. It works only for the corporations. It works only for the system which maintains that political system. So if you are going to get involved in politics, the local level is the place where change can be made. At the local sheriff, for example, has the power to keep federal agents from entering. Code enforcers, this is another huge thing. There is a war on off-grid, cheap living. I call it a conspiracy because it really, in all the sense of the word, it is a conspiracy. It's a conspiracy. The system is conspiring against humans who want to find cheap, sustainable, off-grid solutions. They don't want you to be able to live outside of their system. They don't want you to be able to live without their fake paper monopoly money. They don't want you to be able to do that. So you've got all these different places, counties, cities, whatever the case may be. It is rare to be able to, I don't even know if there's a single place now in the entire country, a county, where you are, according to their stupid codes, are allowed on your own property to camp in a camper or a tent or a van or anything. Now, camping is not allowed. It doesn't matter if that's what you want to do on your own property. And it's just not your property. You pay a yearly rent. They call it property tax. And if you are not allowed to build the type of residence you want, whether that be a camper or a van or a wall tent, if you can't live in what you would like to live in, it's not your property. You don't actually own the property. This is ridiculous. But this is just one of the aspects of the ways in which they are warring against those who are trying to live in off-grid, who are finding solutions on how to get unplugged so they don't need to work full-time jobs. They don't need to work hardly any jobs. They don't want that, yet people are finding ways around it. So when you elect, if you want to focus on politics, electing people who are going to change or eradicate such codes, see, that's a place where the local officials, that's at the local level, and that's where you would, if you believe in politics at all, that's the only place where it's going to work. Another great way that you can fight against corruption is in juries, jury nullification. No matter what the judge says, every jury has the choice to find a person. They can judge not only the case itself, but the law. So if they find a law is unjust and say someone got arrested or got fined for, living in a tent or living in a camper on their own property, and the locals in the area don't think that's wrong, they should be able to do that, and he's in court fighting it, they have the option to say, well, yes, the code says this, and he broke the code, but we think it's unjust, unlawful code, so we're going to find him not guilty. Same thing with the marijuana. If you don't think that someone should go to jail for, smoking or ingesting a natural plant, and that's how you feel about it, and you're on a jury, and there's a person facing drug charges for marijuana possession or growing it or whatever the case may be, and you think that's wrong, even though it's been proven beyond any shadow of a doubt that he did possess the marijuana, you can say as a jury, okay, but we think that law is unjust, not guilty. So that's the power of jury nullification. So there's so many options to fight this system, and almost all of them are at the local level, and in the present moment. Those are the two things, at the local level and what can we do right now. So another way that it's been made difficult to do cheap living and off-grid sustainability is with building codes, of course. So many places now, pretty much everywhere you go, there's lots of building codes, also building permits. You got to pay thousands of dollars just to get a permission to build a house on your own property. In many places, they tell you what your house has to look like. It has to be up to certain standards. Usually those standards involve needing to invest lots of money. They don't want cheap houses. A lot of it's influenced by the people who live there. They don't want their property being devalued. It's all based on money. It's not based on, sustainability and equal rights for everyone. So there's all these codes, and there's ways around it too. So there's places where, say, 100 square foot building or smaller, you do not need a building permit. So some people have been able to build small, tiny, super tiny homes, and they're not considered residences, or so they didn't have to get a permit. And they're within the legal code limits, and maybe they're not technically a residence, or depending, some places you can do this, but you can't live in it. Other places you can live in it, it just only matters how small it is. So there's ways to get around it, and these are just a few of the examples. Another way is, say, 100 square foot footprint, but you could have a 2-story building, so you can actually have 200 square feet of living space, but it's still a 100 square foot, footprint. And lots of people are doing tiny homes. And there's laws, though, in some places have gone so far to not allow you to collect rainwater. And obviously, a lot of cheap property in this country anyway is in the desert places where really no one wants to live. But if you're willing to do that and you can afford a cheap property, you don't want to spend the thousands of dollars to dig a well. One of the best ways, besides hauling water from local cities or buying it from neighbors who do have a well, or maybe they give it to you, but if you don't want to haul water in, one of the best things you can do apart from drilling a deep well is catching rainwater, and that can at least help offset the amount of water that you need to rely on from other places. So, but then a lot of places have banned rainwater catchment, and a lot of people just don't care. They do it anyway because it's insane to have to get a permit for absolutely everything and to have to pay thousands of dollars to be allowed to build a tiny home on your own property and to not be allowed to collect the rain that nature is giving you. And just the ways that they have tried to make it impossible to get off of the system, as many ways as they have, done this, there are ways to get around it, whether it's just through ignoring the rules, whether it's having a bunch of people live in a similar county, and so that enough people are, ignoring this law, they're not going to hassle you because they know they can't arrest everyone. Whether it's using property you already own to try to transform it into some type of commune, some type of community, whether it's donating some land you have to someone who wants to grow, just have a big garden and donate all the food to the local food bank, or make their own food bank based on that. And the list goes on. These are all things that people are doing. I've heard stories and I have met some of these people. Everything I mentioned in this video, whether I've personally experienced it, has been done. The jury nullification has worked to let nonviolent people, kept them from going to prison. I know have seen personal experience seeing at this commune one of such a tiny home that was, within the framework where it was small enough where he didn't have to get a permit to build it, so he was able to add that many more people that could live on the property at one time. This tiny home could fit a couple, and it was a double story, and yet so it had double the actual room in the house as the footprint. So there's just so many different ways. Composting toilets are great. Then you don't need plumbing, and the list just goes on and on. And but I think I've really covered a lot of the basic practical things that we can do. Even if you're in the city, you can grow a garden. If you cannot get out of your apartment or whatever, you can still, in most cases, even if you just have a few herbs growing on the windowsill, medicinal herbs, gardening is just so many great things about gardening. And wherever you're at, in most cases, you can find a way, even if it's just a small garden, to grow a garden. One tomato plant, one pepper plant, and a little bit of cilantro, and the next thing you know, you can make your own salsa. Sure, it's not self-sufficiency, but it's a step in that direction, and you'll gain knowledge of how to grow a plant, and in the future that may come in handy in a survival situation. It might be the difference between life and death. Harvesting acorns, that's something I did recently in California. It's a lot of work, but you can turn acorns into acorn flour, acorn meal, and then use it to bake goods, or eat it raw. And a high protein source, free. If you have oak trees on your property, that's another way of working towards self-sustainability. If you already have oak trees, you're having a free food source every single fall. And especially if you're homesteading and you're not working full-time, you have the time to do it. Or maybe you have a community that you're working towards building. So you have volunteers. It's one of those things where if you have a lot of people working on it, you can get a lot of acorns processed into edible food. And so many more. I could go on and on and on, but I think that is good for this video. I think I've got as much information packed into 1 hour that I can, and hopefully the knowledge that I have gained and shared here will help to inspire at least someone somewhere. And if you like this content, please do give it a thumbs up, share it. The YouTube algorithms are not particularly favorable to my channel, and nor to many other channels, so just share it on whatever social media platforms you are on if you like it. There will be links in the description to some things post on the commune experience and food rescue and a few of the related topics that I've written on. I'll post some links in the description below. Also links to donate in case anyone wants to donate some Bitcoin. And cryptocurrencies, great. Some people have made bank on Bitcoin. They just got lucky. Maybe it's not luck. But there's just so many ways in which the world is changing for the better, and instead of focusing on all the bad negativity which is out there, it is causing a lot of suffering, but we just need to shift our focus to what we can do to counter it, and we are making a difference in this world. People are freeing their minds every day. People are waking up every day. People are finding ways to get off grid. People are meeting like-minded people. People are sharing their ideas, gaining new ideas, and in time, if we do this and we work together and we go within and work together, we will create a better future for our kids, a future of freedom, peace, happiness, abundance for everyone, working hand in hand with nature instead of against nature. That's all for today, folks. Hope you enjoyed the video. Have a wonderful weekend. Till next time, this has been Jason. Peace!